My name is Adam. I work as a relationship manager for ExactTarget. At ExactTarget we provide software that enables marketers to communicate in a relevant way via email, mobile, social and sites. I really encourage you to come to our stand and talk about what we do and how we do it. However, today I will focus on why consumers and the consumer brand relationship. And I will share with you the research, which is all in your seats. Plus I will try to provide you with a approach that will enable you to prevent your consumers from ending that relationship. So 2 questions today. Why does the subscriber, fan or follower actually want to end the relationship? And how can we actually prevent that from happening? And if we have some time left, maybe we can do Q&A or walk through a number of examples of companies that are doing it well and are doing it not so well. But before I want to dive into those 2 questions, I want to share a short story about an encounter that I had 2 weeks ago with a fellow commuter. And funnily enough, that short encounter really shaped the way I structured today's content and the presentation. So 2 weeks ago, I live in Willesden Green and I commute every day to Oxford Circus. So I jump on at Willesden Green, I walk onto the platform and I try to position myself so I have a perfect spot to grab that seat. And the reason why I want to have that seat, because I wanted to do some reading. And I was reading the book of Joseph Jeffy. Maybe you've heard of it. The book is called Flip the Funnel. And briefly what the book is about, it's about the traditional marketing funnel where we try to create awareness and eventually convince the consumer to buy. But his point is actually, after the consumer has bought your product or service, you actually need to use your consumer to sell your product or service again. And I was reading about it, and at Baker Street I always need to swap over to the Bakerloo line, and then the fun of having a seat is often over because it's a lot more crowded. So I was kind of in the middle of this tube trying to read my book, and normally I stop reading, but I was quite intrigued, so I wanted to continue. And on the right side of me there was an older man, quite well dressed. Nothing special, but just before Oxford Circus he becomes to be a bit restless. It's like, I had my earphones in, and early in the morning you're not really feeling so social. But at some point I was like, maybe I should ask what's wrong. So I asked, what's wrong? And he said, well, I don't really know where I am. I was like, well, you're close to Oxford Circus. So he was kind of trying to figure out whether he had to go off or not. And so I asked, okay, where do you need to go? And he said, well, I need to go to King's Cross. And I was like, okay. I took my iPhone out because I'm Dutch, so I need to still use my Tube app to figure out and guide people. So I took that out and I said, okay, you need to swap to the Victoria line. And so we arrived, the doors went open and he turned left and we said goodbye, and then he said to me, it's hard to find your way if you don't know where you are. And I was like, that's interesting. So I was walking back to the office. I was also kind of thinking about the book and what I was going to present today. I was like, it's hard to find your way if you don't know where you are. And I think it's the same as a marketer. Like over the years, the marketing landscape has changed dramatically. And in many ways that, the map that you have to use to kind of achieve your goals has changed. And in the same way, the man didn't have a map of the tube. He couldn't find his way. And I think as a marketer, it's really important to have that map as well so you can reach your goals. So today, one of my goals is to help you maybe change your mind, and maybe you already have this map, but to kind of shape your map so you can actually achieve your goals. And hopefully at the end of the presentation this story will resonate with you. So let's start with the question: why do people actually break up with your brand? And we all know not all relationships are there for the long term. Some of them are bound to end anyway. But it's interesting to look at the underlying factors of why people stop engaging with your brand. And first I want to kind of highlight why having that good relationship is important. When we ask people in the research, what do you do when you want to end the relationship? And interestingly enough, and this is for Facebook and for email, people, well, they said 67% said I unsubscribe, and on Facebook 43% actually unlikes your brand. However, that means that a very large proportion of people have other reasons or have other actions. So what they do is they delete your email, they click on the spam, they do nothing, they just ignore it, or they set up a filter to filter out your emails. And if you think about it, if you want to build up a good relationship with consumers so you can share your content and ideas, but at the same time people are ignoring your messages, and with email, as maybe you're all aware, ISPs like Hotmail and Gmail, they will look at engagement. So if you have no engagement, people are not opening or clicking on your emails, you won't hit the inbox, but you will go to the spam folder. And the same with Facebook. Facebook has got that algorithm that determines based on engagement whether you will be put on the wall. And therefore it is really important to have that good relationship. So let's have a closer look at why people actually stop or when they unsubscribe, stop the relationship via email. And what you can see is that there are 3 top reasons why people unsubscribe or stop the relationship. The first one is they get emails too frequently. The second one is the content wasn't relevant. And the third one is I receive so many emails, my inbox get overcrowded. I need to unsubscribe from certain lists to keep it manageable. And then there is quite a jump to some other reasons. Among I prefer to seek information myself instead of having brands push it to me, or I just signed up for an offer. Well, if you look at those reasons, my perception is, well, that is typically a relationship that was bound to end anyway. So this is email. Well, when we look at Facebook, we see exactly the same. We see again people unlike a brand because they receive posts too frequently. The wall is getting too crowded, or the content became repetitive and boring. And then you see again a massive jump to other factors. Then we look at Twitter, and again we see the same reasons: frequency, relevance of content, and an overcrowded Twitter feed. So if we then kind of look at the overall score, and this is just a simple representation of what you've just seen, and I have assigned a score per factor for the different channels and then added them up. And if you have the lowest score, that means, well, you're the highest in the rankings, and therefore it's the biggest influence as a factor. And that's where you see frequency, relevance, overcrowded, and then a massive jump towards the fourth one, which was the offer-related sign-up. And in many ways, and maybe this is your first year at TMFA, I was here last year as well, and if you go around, everything online is about creating relevance. And again, in many ways, this is, frequency, relevance, and overcrowded inbox. It's all about finding the right message at the right time. So that's nothing new. So why does it come that we still end up with consumers saying that these are the main factors? well, technology events like this are all about creating that relevance. So in order to dive a little bit deeper and find out the true reasons, in my opinion, why that is happening, we need to go back a little bit in time. We need to go back to the 60s, where marketers looked like this. They were wearing fancy suits, had martini lunches, and the main thing that they did was being creative around design and words and the way they branded or positioned the brand. And what they did, they came up with these cool ideas on how to position a brand, like think small, or create that image around Lucky Strike, or other kind of funny ways of promoting a brand. And when you look at these marketers, the main channel that they used was television. And especially moving into the 70s and 80s, television became much more important. And the approach that marketers took was kind of an approach where the television as a media was central. So everyone created a 30-minute or a 30-second spot, broadcasted that, and used other channels to support that, like radio, print, and more towards the 90s, internet came along. But then in the 90s, the internet started exploding. So from having, the few channels you just saw, it went on and on and on. And now these days we have so many channels with social media, mobile, and all these different ways of kind of reaching out to your clients. It's just a completely different landscape. And in many ways it has changed the way we buy, the way we interact with your brand. And it hasn't only changed our behavior where we actually shop, but it also created a whole ecosystem around the conversation. So online, so many interactions are taking place, and it's not only from the brand to the consumer, like how it was with television, but it's a lot more between consumers. So you have a lot more connection points, and in many ways the consumer itself has got the opportunity to share with each other a lot more. So this kind of new ecosystem, as we call it, it has influenced the customer journey. The customer journey isn't as straightforward anymore as it used to be, because at any point in time, the consumer can be influenced or can be, find new information and therefore change his mind and do something else. So now as marketers, we need to start thinking about how are we going to reach out to our consumers. And Forrester, I don't know if you know Forrester, they have got an interesting vision on this. And what they are saying is, instead of having your TV as the central media of your marketing efforts, you should put your website in the center and let social media be around that, and use channels like TV or print. Don't use them to only push, but kind of use them as channels to actually drive your audience to your website, where actually the action and the interaction takes place. So this is an entire new kind of way of thinking, and it's a lot more around the engagement. So the conclusion, kind of, if we think about why consumers stop interacting or stop the relationship with you, is if you think about it, we push a lot of content, and these new channels like email and Facebook, in many ways, it doesn't cost you anything to put a new message out. Well, if you want to build a new commercial, that is going to cost you big time. So as marketers, we need to kind of shift from kind of that push mentality to, hey, how can I engage and find the right touch points? So more or less the question is, can Donald Draper, can he adapt? Can he adapt to this new environment? Now the question is, so how can we prevent, the social breakup? In order to have a closer look at this particular question, I want to dive a bit more into detail around the customer decision process. So typically, the marketing funnel, it narrows down, and it's about creating an awareness, an interest, a desire, and then the consumer goes over into an action, an actual purchase. This is a fairly static approach. Plus, it narrows down to actually the purchase, but what happens afterwards? Because these days, as we just seen, the online marketing landscape has changed, and in many ways that has given the consumer a megaphone. And that megaphone, and this is what I was talking about earlier with Joseph Jeffy, his view is that you need to flip the funnel, and after someone actually bought something, you start to need thinking about how can I actually, well, he calls it the 4 phases of acknowledgement, then start a dialogue with your consumer, and then incentivize him to give a particular, or to activate them and start kind of preaching on your behalf. And this is quite an interesting thought. And if you think about it, so where are we with this question around why subscribers, fans, and followers end the relationship? Is if you look at, we established that frequency, relevance, an overcrowded inbox, wall, or Twitter feed is one of the main reasons why brands stop, or consumers stop engaging with you. Then we looked at, okay, so maybe marketers are taking the wrong approach and maybe pushing too much, which results in maybe irrelevant and frequent messaging. And eventually, if your frequency is too high and you're not relevant, you will lose the battle of the inbox or on the Facebook wall anyway. And then we came up with this new marketing landscape and approach of how you can actually engage and drive your audience to a particular action. And then finally, we looked at kind of flipping the funnel. Now, how can you actually prevent your consumer from breaking up? Well, if we swap this around, so if every time you do something, you start with this in mind, with flipping that funnel, so that your aim is to engage with your consumer instead of pushing certain campaigns or messages out. And once you have that mindset and you start thinking, how does my marketing landscape look like? Is that, what kind of social media platforms are important? What role does my website play? And how can I use other channels to drive people towards a particular action? I think if you take this approach, what will happen is that the frequency of your messaging, the relevance, it will become part of a bigger strategy, and this won't be so much of an issue anymore, because there is more of a purpose behind your communication. And eventually, if you do that well, you won't be the one who will get deleted because the inbox is overcrowded. So in many ways, the conclusion of today is, it's quite simple. Flip the funnel, look at your marketing landscape, and establish not a breakup, but a long-term fruitful relationship. So the question is, if Donald can adapt to this new environment, he will be smiling again. I see that we have some time left, so there are two things we can do. I can dive into a few examples of clients that do this well and don't do this well, or we can maybe start with a Q&A. And maybe by hands, who wants to have a QA right now, or hands for examples? Examples it is. Oh yeah, before, the research that we've done around the social breakup, that's part of a whole sequence, which we call subscribers, fans, and followers. And the whole sequence is about how people engage with your brand via email, mobile, social, and sites. And as you can see, the social breakup is just one of that whole sequence. But if you want to look at other parts, how people engage via mobile, or what the X factors are of email, what kind of the social profile is a really interesting one, where we don't look at your consumers based on age or gender, but you actually look at the type of person they are. So, for example, with Twitter, you have people that, they want to influence people, and we kind of build a profile around them, how you can recognize them, and how you can actually engage with them. So a lot of interesting stuff that I think can help you build out your campaigns, your map, etc. So let's take a look at this first example, and this one is United Airlines, and I'm pretty sure everyone, I think it was 2 years ago that there was a guy on the plane at United Airlines, and he brought his guitar, and it more or less got smashed, and he was trying to get some money out of United Airlines for that, but they kind of ignored him, and there were certain policies. Well, in the end, he went viral. He went to YouTube, created a song about United Airlines and what happened, and he got 12 million views. As a brand, you don't really want that to happen, because it doesn't, really contribute to your brand equity. So you would think United would learn something from that experience. And recently I saw, maybe can you put your hands up if you have seen this post about United Airlines? 2 people, well. There was another post which had 170,000 likes, so that is pretty significant. And it was about a travel agent in New York working on behalf of United Airlines. And there was a flight that was delayed. Everyone went to the desk to rebook their flights. And all of a sudden, this mister comes to the desk and kind of kicking up a scene, and she said, "Oh, sorry, sir, I'm trying to help all the other people first, but if you wait, I will help you out." And then he started to kick off, "Do you know who I am?" And this lady decided to pick up the microphone. She can kind of announce something to the entire gate, and she said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I've got a mister here at my desk who doesn't know who he is. Can someone help us out to figure out who he is?" So quite funny, I thought, and I liked it myself. And then, I wanted to check whether United Airlines did something themselves with this content. And I went to their Facebook page, nothing. I couldn't find this. And I was like, these are typical things, or typically examples that you can actually use as a brand to create engagement and boost your brand equity. Another example, we're staying within the airline industry, KLM, and this is just a simple example of what they do. So this is basically an email that KLM sends out to their subscribers, and telling them what the benefit is of liking them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. And they more or less explain that in an email around the benefits and what you can actually do. So they're driving their subscribers to start engaging with them on a different platform. So in many ways, it doesn't need to be rocket science, but these simple examples can actually, if you think about that map and how you can drive your audiences, this is the way you can do it. And, if you look at this particular example, you can even become more, if you talk about relevance, you send this out to your subscribers. And, you know, are your subscribers already a fan or a follower? You don't know. But if you're smart with your data, and that is something I think in the near future we will be able to do, is that we can start segmenting based on, hey, is a subscriber also a fan or a follower? In that case, we won't send this email because he already knows this. And that's, again, you reduce frequency, and for the people that you actually send it to, you create relevance. Another one. I'm not sure, but maybe you've seen the commercial of Vanish. I thought they did it pretty smart. So they had a commercial on television where they kind of promote the tip exchange. And the tip exchange is something on Facebook where people can exchange tips and tricks around how you can remove stains. And you know, for a brand like Vanish, I was quite surprised because when I saw that on television, I was like, yeah, that's how you actually use television as a medium to drive people to a different platform where you can create kind of the social interaction between your consumers and actually stimulate the way they use your product. And I thought that was a very good example of the map we just saw. The thing is, like, as I said before, Forrester, they say, well, you need to actually put your website in the center of the universe. And the reason why they say that is because people trust you more on your own website. You have the ability to create a deeper experience from a content perspective, and it's owned by you, so you have full control. But you know, it's an interesting view, and I think there's a lot of truth in there. But with this particular example, it's more where you put Facebook in the center, and I think you can play around with that and experiment with that as well. This is an example of Best Buy, and they send out a promotional email on a weekly basis. And what they do in their email is all the different parts of the email are based on consumer data. So they are about you. So for example, you can see there are personalized product recommendations, and those are based on actual purchase behavior or what you have been looking on the web. Then they use your preferences, where you live, etc. They use that to include the local store information. And in that way, they create a lot of relevance in their communication. What they also do is after you purchased, they send out a sequence of emails, and they will suppress you in their newsletter. And what they actually do is you know, if you look at Joseph Jeffy and his flip the funnel approach, they more or less acknowledge first that the consumer bought something, then proposes some recommendations around accessory, and then finally follow up with, hey, do you want to put a review on our website? And in that way, drive people back to the website and ask for a review that actually can benefit your brand to sell more. So and this was actually the last example, and it's time as well. But as you can see, in many ways, it doesn't need to be rocket science. It's just trying to change the way you can look at the marketing landscape and drive people between the various medias. Thank you for your time, and I hope it was insightful.